Welcome to Game 1 of the Blochtober World Championship Series, where some of the greatest book athletes from all over Glendale, Arizona have come to compete. The big comfy chair has been brought out onto the field, and our first competitor today is relative newcomer Robbie Joe, representing L Space Archives.
Yeah, Frank, Robbie has taken up his position, and he's going through his warm-up exercises. And safety glasses up. And we're off. Oh no, a bit of a fumble there getting past the table of contents, but a nice recovery.
He is in the zone. Look at that concentration.
That's right, Ed. He is laser focused on the text. Robbie has chosen to start off with Horror 7, a collection of Robert Bloch short stories. This first one is entitled Enoch. Great place to start, Ed. This first appeared in Weird Tales in September 1946. This is a 5-star story from Bloch. In fact, it's included in the Best of Robert Bloch put out by Del Rey Ballantyne. You can see a lot of the elements that would later find their way into Bloch's novel Psycho, especially the personality of the central character.
So true, Stephen. When I read this, I couldn't help but picture a young Antonio Perkins in the role of the viewpoint character. Speaking of that Del Rey Ballantyne series, be sure to tune in to SF Words of Wonder with hosts Ira, Richard, and Matt for in-depth play-by-play coverage of the best of Robert Bloch. Check your local listings for game time.
Note how Robbie is preloading the next page, sliding his finger in there, getting ready for the turn. Incredibly important to set up those page flips in advance, Bob.
How right you are, Jimmy. And there's the flip. Holy cow! He went straight from the last word of one page to the first word of the next without missing a beat. Unbelievable. The crowd is going wild.
That's what separates the amateur readers from the true literary athletes. You can tell he's been working on that wrist rotation during the off-season. It's crisp, efficient, making sure his hand doesn't block his view of the words on the page.
I know it's still early, but what sort of strategy do you expect to see from L Space Archives in this competition?
Well, Frank, it looks like Robbie is starting at the top of the page and working his way across the line from left to right. Then he's dropping down to the next line, doubling back to the left side and repeating the pattern. It's a solid strategy, so I expect we'll be seeing a lot more of that throughout the tournament. Of course, there's bound to be hurdles along the way that can trip him up, but when that happens, you have to go back to basics. Like my kindergarten coach always said, sound out the letters and just keep putting one word after the other.
So at this point, what do you think Robbie's chances are in the overall competition?
Well, Doug, considering L Space Archives is the only competitor in the Blochtober Championship Series, I'd say his odds right now are about 50-50.
Oh no, there's a fan on the field.
Always unfortunate when an overzealous fan gets a little too much catnip from the concession stand.
And he's off. Something like that can completely wreck a player's concentration, but Robbie somehow managed to stay focused on the page.
Truly, though, L Space was so in the zone, I don't even think he noticed.
Holy Halloween candy corn! Look at that. Out of nowhere, Robbie Joe has turned on the speed. He is flying through those pages.
This is exactly why the league requires those safety glasses. When you're reading at these speeds, a piece of ephemera can come shooting out of those pages and take out an eye.
That's right, Billy. The rule was instituted after the tragic incident in 1994 when little Danny Oglesby was lobotomized by a bookmark during the L. Ron Hubbard Halloween Classic.
Always a risk when reading Hubbard, Tom.
And he's finished the first story. And it looks like he's calling for a timeout. And just like that, Robert Bloch's Horror 7 drops to Horror 6, as Robbie Joe puts his first point on the board for Elspeth's Archives. And he's back. Blessed bovine of St. Beauregard. He just launched himself straight into the second story.
Yeah, this is one of Bloch's science fiction stories, The Strange Flight of Richard Clayton, first published in Amazing Stories in March 1939. It's about an astronaut going on the first flight to Mars. Something goes wrong during takeoff, and all of his instrument panels go down. He goes stir-crazy as he loses all sense of time, trapped inside this small capsule. This could have been a 4-star story. Unfortunately, the poor pacing at the beginning knocks this down to a 3-star for me. The astronaut goes stir-crazy almost immediately after launch, which, in my opinion, makes the twist at the end less impactful. This story would have benefited from a slightly slower pace at the beginning so we could see the deterioration of the character's mental state as he loses his sense of the passage of time.
Fascinating, Matt. Oh man, you can really see Robbie's lungs pumping.
That's right, Matt. Very important to keep those brain cells oxygenated when you're reading at this level.
And boom, just like that, story number 2 is in the books, and Elspeth Anchovy breaks before heading into round 3.
Yeah, when you're drinking as much Diet Mountain Dew as these athletes are, you're going to need to make several pit stops along the way. These next 2 stories are Opener of the Way and Return to the Sabbath. Both are horror weird tales. These were somewhere around the 3.5-star range for me. I enjoyed both. Both have a nice creepy vibe, but they don't rank up there with some of Bloch's other stories. The Opener of the Way is from Weird Tales, October 1936. It's about an obsessed archaeologist and his son and the statue of Anubis. Rob's coming up on a tricky section now, a dense paragraph of exposition. This is where amateurs start drifting. He'll need focus, stamina, and possibly a sip of a caffeinated beverage.
And he's reaching for the mug. That's a bold move in mid-paragraph, Michael. And he stays on the line, never loses his place.
That's why he's a pro, Stan.
You know, Corey, some of our viewers may wonder why these athletes choose to read these stories via these collected works rather than in their original pulp magazine format.
Well, in these types of tournaments, it's all about speed and focus. With the pulp magazines, it's way too easy for an athlete to get distracted by all those amazing illustrations, or worse, they drop out of the games halfway through to go join the Rosicrucians.
Oh, that sweet, sweet lure of ancient eldritch knowledge can be hard to resist.
And now he started Return to the Sabbath from Weird Tales, July 1938. This is about Hollywood producers who see a forbidden film made by occultists and hire its star.
Next up is The Mandarin's Canaries from Weird Tales, September 1938. This is also a 3 to 3.5 star read for me. It reads like a dark Chinese fairy tale, which I liked, and this could have easily been a 4-star read. Unfortunately, it has quite a few racial slurs that work to the detriment of the story. I understand that it's of its time, as they say, but because it's supposed to read like a Chinese fairy tale, it would be hard to imagine a Chinese person, regardless of the time it was written in, referring to themselves as yellow-skinned or using some of the other epithets that Bloch uses here.
I agree, John. Unfortunately, things like this are going to come up again and again as this Blochtober series goes on. It looks like Robbie has pushed through it and is on to the next one. This one is The Shambler from the Stars, first seen in Weird Tales in September 1935. This was another 4 to 4.5 star cosmic horror weird tale with a very Lovecraftian vibe about an aspiring pulp writer who is seeking out ancient forbidden books of occult knowledge.
That never ends well, Betty.
No, it does not, George.
And finally, we are on the home stretch. Robbie has entered the final story in this collection, and no signs of slowing down. I haven't seen reading at these speeds since Deb the Omnivorous Reader took home the trophy at the Rogers-Zelazny World Cup in 2006.
Sadly, this final story is just okay. It's The Secret of Sebek from Weird Tales, November 1937. This one is about a guy who gets invited to a party by a group of occultists in New Orleans. Again, enjoyable, 3 stars, but nothing that really blew me out of the water.
And bam! Elspeth's Artichoke completes the first block collection. 1 man, 1 book, 7 short stories, total domination. Horse 7 goes down without a fight.
1 down, 27 more to go.
Well, folks, that wraps it up for tonight. Be sure to join us for the Bloch Short Story Wrap-Up Show with highlights of all the Blochtober Championship matches, only here on LSA, your network for literary sports. Until next time, keep your eyes sharp, stay hydrated, and keep your bookmarks handy.